this?
Hey everyone, welcome back to Track Day Diaries. Hope you enjoyed the intro as much as I did. Stock Z06, C8 motor for the track, that's the question I'm going to answer today. Let's find out if spending Z06 money is going to be the best way to go when you're trying to get the most out of a C8 on track. Getting the chance to drive the Z06 on track was an offer I couldn't pass up, so here we are. We're going to compare it with the C8, which I own and I modded for the track. Specifically aero, suspension, brakes, nothing done to the engine, and the bucket seats. The C8 Z06 is pretty much stock. In fact, it has Cup 2 tires, which technically makes it less than stock, but it has the Z06, Z07 package. So we're going to talk about engine, handling, braking, suspension, transmission, and just general overall thoughts. So the NAV8 engine in the C8 Stingray is no slouch. It has 500 horsepower, which is a lot of horsepower, and it delivers that classic muscle car tone from a mid-engine car, which is pretty much the only car that does this. And I think that makes it kind of special in its own right. However, it's pretty clear that Chevy intended for the Z06 to surpass that, and not by a little, but actually by a lot. So let's listen to the sounds again of the Stingray and the Z06. So I can't lie, when the Z06 came out, I did a lot of contemplating on maybe like why it's worth the extra $40,000. And I'm not here to say that it is or it's not worth the extra $40,000. What I will say though is the closest I've ever felt to feeling what I felt in the driver's seats driving this car was driving the 911 GT3. The 911 GT3, as we all know, is like twice the price of Z06. So that's not happening. It's also less powerful, it has 2 less cylinders, but it makes up for it in other ways. My only gripe with the Z06 is I wish they would just sell a detuned like 500 horsepower version of it and put it in the Stingray. It probably does not make financial sense, I know. So 670 horsepower is quite a lot to have. The problem, and you know, I'm not one to complain about too much power. You can always just drive less, I guess. The problem with having so much power in your car, when your car sounds so good, is you want to ring it out. So the way this car is set up, at full throttle, you're going to want to be in 3rd or 4th gear to really hear the engine. And that's because with the horsepower being so high, it goes through 1st and 2nd gear like instantly. So you don't really have enough time to actually appreciate 1st, 2nd, and yeah, I'm gonna play a clip just to show you what that looks like.
I don't want to hear any more talking, Jack. I don't want to hear the radio again. I don't want to hear Doja Cat. Just give me some exotic, sweet American engines.
So my point here is like 3rd, 4th, 5th gear is when you can really like listen to the engine. And when I say listen to the engine, this engine forces you to listen to it. I have an exhaust that essentially straight pipes from the cats to the exit, and I thought that was loud, and I couldn't believe how much louder the Z06 comes from the factory. And not only is it loud, it is better as a driver than it is as a passenger. I don't know if this is something that maybe a lot of other people have kind of said or discovered on the internet. I sat passenger seat in a Z06, I've sat driver's seat in a Z06. I think the experience is just so much better in the driver's seat. I think the sound is so much better. Maybe part of it is, you know, just that feeling of control, but it's just so much better in the driver's seat. So I cannot say enough good things about the sound of this engine. I think it contributes heavily to the character of this car. Is the engine alone worth 40 grand? Perhaps not, but the car is not just an engine. The car actually is an overall upgrade from the base C8s. which leads us to the next section. My Stingray has coilovers and sway bars. It is essentially dialed in to be extremely stiff because it also has a lot of aero. And so I get almost instant weight transfer, making quick transitions or turning. And what that means for me is incredibly high stability in high-speed corners and very flat and controllable in low-speed corners. And not just flat and controllable, but I can easily make quick transitions without a lot of waiting. The stock Stingray is extremely bad at this. I think maybe I didn't notice this at first. However, the Z06 almost fixes that. I can't quite say it's all but resolved, but I think they made a wonderful balance between a street car and a track car as far as handling performance on the track goes. It's very, very different from how a stock Stingray is. It's definitely not up to par with what my car has. So the problem with that is I had to make a lot of sacrifices to kind of keep that level of stability and platform in my car, such that when I'm on the street, it's extremely bumpy, it's extremely stiff, it's extremely hard. Still in denial, but I think it's not a smooth driving car. And so with the MagneRide suspension on the Z06, it's quite amazing actually that, you know, the same car is this stable on the track and not too punishing on the street. You can never have the best of both worlds. There's always going to be some compromises. It's either going to be weight or complexity or something, but I think the Z06 is as good as it gets, especially since it doesn't have a huge amount of downforce. I would say where the Z06 handling shines, especially compared to both the Stingray modded and not modded, is I felt the extra stability. It feels like a wider car. I think this is a good thing. It may not necessarily be a good thing in slow speed corners, but I don't think this car is really meant to go slow most of the time. As far as high-speed stuff, with the Z07 package, it does come with that little wing. I'm kidding. It does come with the wing at the back and, you know, a front splitter extension. It is flat underneath, so it does act like a splitter, but if you look at the side profile, you're going to notice that it's still higher at the leading edge than it is where the front axle is. And so I don't think it's extremely effective. However, it is doing something, and I can feel this driving the car. It felt very stable at high speeds as well. But there's nothing that beats a full aero kit. I have a wing, I have a diffuser, I have a splitter, and you just cannot beat, you know, a dedicated combo like that when it comes to aero speeds. I think I'm able to carry at least 5 miles an hour higher in pretty much all high aero corners that I can think of on this track. However, the sacrifice that I had to make is going anywhere. I pretty much have to plan how I'm going to enter the parking lot, which some of you may empathize with. The other sacrifice I had to make is the wing in my car doesn't let my trunk open fully. It's not the worst thing in the world, but again, as you may already start to see, the answer for which is better depends on what you're ready to sacrifice. If you want this Z06 to be a car that you want to be able to drive pretty often on the track and then drive back home, then yeah, I think that's going to be you're just going to have a different set of priorities from what I have, which is ultimately to go fast. Now, can you take the Z06 and add all the stuff that I've done to my car and make an even faster car? Absolutely. Are you going to want to do that to a $100,000 plus car? I'm not the pocket police. As far as speeds on the straights, I was seeing top speeds of 140 something, maybe 45 on the Z06, and on this Stingray it will be like 135. So 10 miles an hour is a lot of speed difference. The Z06 feels like it pulls even harder, obviously, but it feels like it pulls much harder than the 10 mile an hour difference might suggest. I think the only car that I've ever driven that pulled even harder was a tuned 720S, and yeah, I mean, that just explains itself. So as far as handling goes, I'm going to get this one to the Stingray. I think the big caveat here is you have to live with the drivability or lack thereof when it comes to street manners, but again, this is a track comparison and the Stingray is absolutely going to get it. So I think I finally got to a point in my braking mod journey where I'm pretty confident in what I have. Unfortunate reality of that is you're going to have to spend a lot of money to get here. Braking is such a key component in extracting lap time that you do not want to mess around with that. The Z06 has the CCB package or the carbon ceramic rotors on. The Stingray has the AP kit. I think they're pretty much comparable one for one. Carbon ceramics are definitely lighter. I can't say that I felt the lightness. It's kind of hard to feel stuff like that, especially if you didn't do like a before and after. However, I will say that I am kind of happy with them. I think they have the same braking issues that every C8 has, which is lack of feedback. It's not easy to really throw brake. It won't really tell you when the ABS is activated. It's not really going to tell you when your brake starts to fade, and it's possibly hard to get used to the brake feel. However, it brakes, it stops, it definitely stops, and you kind of have to stop when your car is so fast. I think the AP kit and the CCB kit in the Z06 are pretty much equals. I think another thing to note is the cost is kind of high for both of those kits. They're about the same, which is like 10,000, and the AP kit is going to be a lot more durable. I can't say the CCBs are worth it necessarily over the stock Z06 or stock Stingray brakes, because you can always take that money that you save by not going to CCB and just plopping them into like an AP kit or a Brembo kit or something else. All right, so let's talk about the transmission. I would say, in my opinion, the transmission is pretty much exactly the same. The only thing that I noticed was the willingness for the Z06 to switch down to second gear. I think this might be a bit surprising for me because the Stingray second gear tops out at around 50 something, maybe 58. In the Z06, it tops out at around 85. So this is great because it gives you another chance to hear an upshift. And all you want to do when you drive this car is to hear the engine go from here to the boom. Quick section on the interior or the driver's interface. A lot of people already talked about this, but they are pretty much exactly the same. My car is slightly different because, again, water for the track. So what I have is the AIM system, I have the tire temp Team Plus system, and then I have bucket seats. The one thing that I miss in the Z06 the most is going to be the bucket seats, and that's just because being held in place is just so underrated when you're on track. You really need to be able to feel the car, and this car doesn't necessarily lend itself to being felt as much as the same car with bucket seats goes. Priorities, right? So as far as being a track car goes, I think you cannot beat having a bucket seat, so I think the Stingray takes this round. However, it is extremely rough living with the bucket seat. If you've never done it, I hope you give it a chance one day. It's fun until it's not. I think the bucket seat, more than anything, really limited my mobility with the car and just willingness to go anywhere. So that's going to be the bucket seat and the Aero. And then the suspension. It's really just not a good street car anymore, and you just have to accept that. And I think this is really where the Z06 shines. Is one angle is this is the ultimate track car that you can drive anywhere you want and just go whip it on track. I think the Stingray gives that promise, but it falls short in a lot of departments, especially when compared to the Stingray. Especially when you understand that in order to really extract the most from the car, you have to do all these mods. In order to extract the most from any car, you pretty much have to mod it. However, if your goal is to track and back without modding the car, then I think the Z06 simply cannot be beat. The other side of this coin is it's really hard to explain how much you really need to be on track to really get the performance from this car. I don't think the Z06 is a car that anyone should be happy with if they don't track it, or if they don't pretty much go like 150 miles an hour, every time they drive it. And I think, I have this problem with the C8. It's such a good car right now that when I drive it in the streets, I want to break the law. The car is just itching to, be pushed. And I just cannot imagine having all that power and, just the intoxicating sound on the streets with a pretty much factory built race car. It literally uses the same engine as the GT3 race car, and yeah, you feel that. It feels that good. So as far as traction control goes on this car, it's pretty much the same. I am pretty comfortable with traction control at the highest setting or the lowest setting, depending on how you look at it. I think on both cars it's pretty similar. They will both let you go sideways, but they would not necessarily let you go beyond that. I really don't know. All I know is even with traction control not fully off, it does let you do a lot of stupid shit. So it is the same in both cars. So one final thing on the feel is the steering. I think from the factory, the Z06 steering is a little sharper. So when it comes to lap times, I pretty much drove both cars for about a session. I think I did like 6 laps in the C8 that morning, and then I did like 4 laps in the Z06. I was consistently getting faster in the Z06. I mean, as was I in the C8. However, my best C8 time was a 1:56.2. My best Z06 time was a 158 point something. The C8 on this track has done a 153, and I don't know what the Thunderhill record is for the Z06, but note that this Z06 was on Cup 2 tires, not Cup 2Rs, and I only had like a couple laps in it. I think at its best, we could probably get it to a 53, and maybe if you slap down some like brand new like Supercar 3R tires, you could probably get into a 51, 52. Overall, I'm pretty sold on the Z06. I think it can be a suitable replacement for the Stingray that I have. I think at a time in my life, maybe when I don't crave or care about ultimate performance out of a car, and I have enough money, I think the Z06 is definitely going to be on the radar for me. So let's break it down. Engine, Z06 obviously wins. Handling, I think my car can take that one. Braking is pretty much equal. The drive-in feel, I think my car takes that one, and driving confidence in general. And once again, I think it's hard to give you exact lap times on, what it actually looks like. I think my car might still take the edge just because it's lighter and it has more aero. However, in the hands of an actual professional, I don't know who's going to win, but I think it's going to be extremely close. Andy, who drove the C8 at Grid Life, was about 2 seconds faster in a Z06 on a about 2-minute track. His car doesn't have aero, so I think, that pretty much confirms that both of these cars would be about the same speed. I think they both approach the speed in different ways. And I think this is why the ultimate maybe combination of both would be a Stingray with a Z06 engine, and I don't care if it's detuned, but it would just be great. So, can the modified Stingray hang with the Z06? In terms of engine and just raw thrill, I don't think so. I think it's crazy that the Z06 sounds louder stock than the pretty much straight piped Stingray. And not only does it sound louder, it sounds like 10 times better. It's hard to put it into words or describe how it is, but you probably watch all the reviews, and all the reviews say the exact same thing. They all rave about the engine, they all rave about the sound, and there's a big reason why, and you really just had to be there. I'm so grateful and so happy I got the chance to do this, and I think it really is going to influence my future direction moving forward. I'm still going to keep tracking the Stingray. I love that car to death. I think what this experience makes clear for me is you really just get what you pay for. Hope this was helpful in making your decision, or entertaining you, or educating you at least, and hope to see you in the next one. Bye. I said bye. Bye.
If you want me to become part of your car,
We'll pull you out.
fire drill.
All right, let's go. Take everything out.
Take everything out of the pockets.
Hey, I could take the top off too.
The top would have to probably come off. Nope. I hope you're recording this. This is part of your video.